Oh no, so much water spilling out of the system. What happened? Welcome back to the Barnfind Audi TT's next update. We had a bit of a false start with this step of the project, as when I went to install the air conditioner receiver dryer, I noticed that I couldn't bolt up the bottom air conditioning hose. This resulted in us bolting the radiator carrier on, but then having to take it off again. I found that the top hard line for the receiver dryer was kinked, so I went to bend it back, and this resulted in the line breaking, so we had to start again. I was pretty frustrated that we didn't get to finish putting the front back on, so to make myself feel better, I installed the upgraded strut top poly bushes by Powerflex. You can see the huge difference in a used bush versus what height they should be. Since everything had to come back off, I decided to clean the cooling components a little bit by brushing away the built-up dead bugs, small rocks, and plant material from the radiator, aircon condenser, and intercoolers. Assembling the cooling components together isn't too hard and consists of 4 torque screws for each part. The air conditioning condenser can only be installed when the radiator is away from the radiator carrier panel. It doesn't have to be fully removed from the car, but it's easier to visualize the process this way. It attaches in the front of the radiator with 4 screws. One last bolt to remember is the one that screws in from underneath, near where the lower radiator hose is. This one's not accessible when it's installed onto the radiator panel. To shake some dirt from the assembly, and this is now ready to be installed back into the radiator carrier. Take note of the 4 rubber bushes at each corner of the radiator. These are the bushes that slot into the radiator carrier and allow the 4 torque screws to fasten the radiator assembly to the radiator carrier. Take 2 for installing the receiver dryer. This time I'm using a new one for peace of mind. The old one can be used for an emergency. Now this simply attaches to the hard line and sits in a bracket which is secured by a 4mm hex bolt. I'm always careful to thread the aircon bolts in by hand first to ensure no cross-threading in the soft aluminium threads. I've also installed new O-rings before tightening down the bolts. This time both of the lines into the receiver dryer line up. To complete the radiator assembly, the final part to install are the radiator fans. Again, there are 4 torque screws that fasten this down. Now that everything aligns, we're able to put the TT's eyes and front back on. Now we can see the iconic shape and look taking shape again. God, I love those TT's bubbly headlights, look at them. Now we're mindful to align the radiator assembly correctly before pushing it on so as not to damage any panels or components when mating it up to the body. When you're happy with the placement, push the radiator assembly all the way onto the chassis rails and do up the 6 bolts on either side. Torque specs are in the description below. We also had to tighten up the crash bar's bolts as they were loosened up for some reason. Onto the last few cooling components. The coolant after run pump needs to be fixed into place and the wiring fastened to its clip and plugged in. Next is the connector at the top and the bottom of the radiator, along with connecting the fans and the radiator sensor switch. You can see the aftermarket bottom hose is a bit too fat for the holder. Now this becomes a problem in a bit. That's everything connected now, so it's time to reconnect the battery and MAF to run the engine and test the cooling system to ensure that it's watertight. I like to run the engine and then pour demineralized water in first, just in case anything explodes. This way you won't have coolant go everywhere and make a mess. It takes a few bottles to fill up the system and then disaster. I had water bursting out of somewhere, so I had to stop and check where this was coming from. And I had a pretty good hunch about where it was. I needed to get back under and replace the aftermarket bottom radiator to the thermostat housing hose, where the original one, which was a way better fitment than the aftermarket silicone version. With that swapped over, I was able to continue where I left off, where I turned the heater on and this time filled up with coolant as I waited for the coolant temperature to rise. With the engine running, I'm also able to scroll through some of the other screens since this control is installed. Let me know if you want me to do an overview of this hardware in the comments below. Now that the coolant temps are high enough, the reservoir can be filled high and you can see the level goes right down, which tells me the coolant is filling up in the system and everything's working well. The engine is full of all the required fluids now and in good running order. It's still a little noisy, but that should all settle when oil is fully run through the system and fully pressurizes all the components. I'm very happy now, especially after the few humps encountered. Not long now until the TT's base is reinstalled and looking like the iconic car we all know and love. Thanks for watching this update and see you all in the next one. Bye!